Well, welcome back to the When I Heard This podcast. My name is Nate Ramos. I'm here with Pastor Joseph Tillman, MDiv, soon to be D-Man. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well. I think the question is, how are you doing? That last episode got you going, my man.
I'm doing absolutely wonderful.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Good.
Yep. No therapy required.
Are you sure? Maybe you talking to somebody. Did you talk it out?
I didn't talk to anybody.
Okay.
I just slept on it.
Okay.
And then I woke up worse. And then I went to sleep the next night.
Right.
Slept on it.
Right.
And then woke up completely fine.
That's
the circle of life.
That's a circle of life.
And that's how you deal with your problems.
Just sleep on it. Have a second night sleep
Yeah.
the first night. The second night sleep, you're all good.
Uh-huh.
Okay. You know, there is actually something to the fact of just sleeping on it.
Yeah.
That's actually a real thing.
Except you're not supposed to go to bed angry.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you kind of got to.
Yeah. Yeah, like if your bed's uncomfortable.
you're just mad
There's
at your bed.
There's no way to fix it. There's no way to not go to bed angry.
And then sometimes you just do go to bed angry. And that's just the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
And then but you deal with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
No idea.
All right. Well, go
therapy.
to Patreon, $5. Like, subscribe, share, comment, follow, download. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at When I Heard This Podcast, and X and Locals at When I Heard This. Tell everyone that you know about the show. Ring the notification bell, and go to our website where there's t-shirts.
Yep. Buy merch.
Yeah. More therapy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Not really, though, because this isn't therapy. This is us talking about, well, it's you talking about therapy and then me just.
Maybe it is therapeutic for you, though. Was last week's therapeutic for you? It probably was.
Being able to say all those things out loud?
Yeah.
I guess.
See, there
but
you
I've
go.
said those out loud 100 times before, so the therapy's not working.
But I feel like we made progress. We made a step forward with you last week.
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
All right, well, time to take a step backward. All right, so my first question.
Uh-huh.
Yes, after my big old thing last week.
Right.
All right, so you're a Christian pastor, unlicensed counselor that does unlicensed counseling.
Correct. Yeah, I do biblical counseling.
Biblical unlicensed counseling.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So, from the pastor that you are,
Uh-huh.
how much Jesus should I pour on my problems before I consider therapy or drugs?
Okay. Like, what kind of drugs are we talking about here, Nate?
Not real drugs, like
Okay.
good drugs. Or not good drugs. None drugs are good. I don't know. Before I start taking psychological medicine.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Like how far can Jesus take me until I need to go to the therapist?
Oh, I got you.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, without question, like even there's stats that show that people that have religion are typically able to work through problems, issues more effectively.
Any religion?
I think it's pretty much anyone that believes in a God and a higher power. They typically are able to walk through things because they believe they're not simply dependent on their own strength or their own counsel. There's some being that's helping them.
Okay.
So, and then obviously as a Christian, there's obviously the fact that, when you worship, when you pray, when you're in community together, when you're reading the word, we believe all those things can be transformative for an individual. So they can bring healing, they can bring wholeness, even things like discipleship and deliverance, all of those things can be part of the healing process.
Okay.
But there are things that are, whether it's trauma or whether it's just grief that you just can't move beyond and move past. And, and when I say grief that can't move beyond, move past, I mean like it's 3 to 5 years and you're still in an intense place of grief. Then therapy can be very healthy. And I'm not saying you have to wait 3 to 5 years to decide that. I'm just saying that when there's intense grief, or when there's like trauma, abuse, that I think talking to a therapist is really helpful. Okay. So on those levels. And those are kind of like obviously the deeper issues, or if you're just always filled with anxiety and, you're praying every day, and I know people who've done this, like they're praying every day, they're in the Word every day or most days, and yet they still are struggling with anxiety. Okay, let's figure out the root of that anxiety.
Okay.
And so a therapist may be very helpful for that. And then on like just a more kind of a practical level, and we may phrase this more in the word of the counseling world, but like if you're needing to talk to someone about how to communicate more effectively with your spouse, how to make a decision on a parenting issue, those are places to go for counseling as well. And so I think that, I guess what I'm saying is, I think there's a place to be like, I don't think you're just like throwing Jesus on something. It's, I'm walking my life out as a Christian. I realize I need something a little more specific in helping to deal with these emotional or mental things that I'm having, or just life issues that I'm having. And I need another voice to help me process or to help guide me through those things that I think can be really helpful.
So if someone came up to you, and if a non-Christian came up to you and was suffering, they told you they were having depression, would you first recommend them to a Christian therapist, or would you first tell them to become a Christian and do Jesus things?
Okay. So they're a Christian coming to me?
No, a non-Christian.
They're a non-Christian
Yes.
coming to me. No, they're dealing with depression.
Yes.
Yeah. Then and if I talk,
or they just say they're dealing with depression, would you first say, "Hey, let's read the Bible and get you all Christianed up," or would you send them to a Christian therapist?
No, I think going to a Christian therapist would be the step I would take. If it's like genuine, like clinical depression.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the people who say that Jesus is the answer to all of these problems.
Right.
What's that about? Is that true?
Sure.
And again, I feel like I lean that direction because I don't like therapy.
I know.
Anything other than therapy is better than therapy.
So you're kind of the viewpoint of anything, any alternative.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
Alcoholism,
that's
drug abuse.
Right. better than therapy.
Hooking, all of it. Better than therapy.
Those are terrible. No, don't listen to Nate. Oh God. No, I would. What was the question
again? I'm half kidding.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
All right, so
the people who say that
Jesus is enough.
That Jesus is enough, and you shouldn't have to go to a therapist.
Right.
Basically.
No, I disagree with that.
Okay.
Completely.
Why?
Because I think Jesus uses counselors. Jesus uses therapists in the same way that Jesus uses medical doctors for things that we deal with in our own physical bodies.
Oh,
I mean, if we believe Jesus is a healer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we say, well, if you have any emotional healing or mental healing that you need to go through, Jesus can take care of that. But, hey, if there's physical healings you need, go see a doctor.
Okay.
I think you have to be consistent. And so I think the consistency lies in the fact of, no, there are times where we actually need someone that's a trained therapist, trained counselor to help guide us through a process of healing that I think the Lord can actually use them for that, so that we don't have to remain in a state of anxiety or a state of depression or in a state of real deep sorrow or grief or those kind of things.
Okay, so therapists recommend drugs for psychiatrists or medical doctors to prescribe for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how do therapists talk to somebody and realize that they need to take brain-altering drugs just by talking to them?
Right.
This doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Because if you said, hey, we looked at a brain scan or
sure,
blood stuff,
right,
and said, hey, you're not getting enough whatevers to your head, that makes sense.
Okay.
But talking to them doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So how do they do this, and what do you think about it?
Yeah. So, no, but they're not going to, hopefully, they're not like giving medicine like out the gate. Right?
Okay.
So, like, hopefully session 1 doesn't lead to medicine being prescribed. For me personally.
But most of the time it does.
There may be other therapists that would disagree with me on that. But I think that it's going to take some time to understand where the person is to discover, do they actually need medicine to help them with their anxiety, with their sleep disorder, with depression, with panic attacks, ADHD, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that it's going to take time in discussing. But yes, I do think that over time, you can determine if this is something that is, take time to discover if this is something that is actually needed. And I mean, there are such things as like chemical imbalances that people
that makes sense.
Yeah, that
you need
genuinely
the chemical
deal with,
because you don't have the chemical,
right?
Or you got too much of the chemical, so
right. And then there's other individuals that need the medicine. Again, I use the word anxiety a lot, or the example of anxiety, because I'm intimately acquainted with it through people that I have counseled and through friends and family, and so I know probably more about that specific topic. And I think that, for example, if you're dealing with anxiety,
I feel like that is the lowest level of mental disorders that people get prescribed stuff for, and it seems like BS.
Well, and I think sometimes it can be, but I do think there's other times where they're genuinely in need of medication to help pull them off that edge, because in their anxiety, they feel like they're on the verge of a panic attack all the time.
Okay.
And I do think that getting medicine to help pull them off that ledge a little bit, pull them off that, get them off the edge and let them begin to be able to breathe and then actually go through therapy without feeling like they're on edge all the time, like they're feeling like they're going through having a panic attack. Go through the therapy, receive the healing they need, and then you can begin to wean them off, anxiety medication. But for the individuals that are just prescribing drugs just all over the place and labeling individuals with all these different disorders and mental health issues, and I do think that's problematic when they're just handing out or prescribing medicine like it's like giving it out like it's candy.
Right.
So I do think there's a balance on all of it, but I do think there's a place for it that you can come to determine through enough conversations with that individual.
Okay, so it feels like the therapy industry right now is inviting people. It's inviting more people who know and think the way I do about it, that it's sort of a grift.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so it feels like more and more of people like that are going into psych majors and whatever to become therapists, because they know that it's easy to do. And all you have to do is sit there and ask questions. Right. And you never really have to actually solve anyone's problems. And they just pay you forever because insurance pays for it, meaning we pay for it.
Right.
Congratulations. So it just feels like the way the industry is right now is inviting those types of people to join the industry.
Okay.
And that I feel like it's still headed in the wrong direction.
So you feel like they're therapists with wrong intentions.
Yes. And it's in the industry is inviting people, inviting therapists to become therapists.
Right.
With wrong intentions.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, what do you think?
I hear what you're saying, and let's say that's the case.
Okay.
I don't think they'd last long as therapists if they're just in it for the money.
Why not?
Because the amount of things they're going to hear is going to take a toll on them after a while. Because, so for example, and I don't,
nothing new under the sun.
There's nothing new under the sun. But when you are for me as a pastor, yes, people confide in me, people share things with me, and I may have at most a few of those types of meetings a day, maybe 5 to 6 or so over the course of a few days. Which
of just
would be
people telling you horrible stuff.
It doesn't have to be horrible stuff, right? No. But just, hey, I'm going through this. Can you pray with me? And it's just those kind of things where, or, hey, my husband and I are trying to figure out something, or my wife and I are trying to figure out something. Can you talk to us? What would be your advice? What would be your counsel? And so like, I get that on a pretty regular basis. Okay. Mm-hmm. But again, it's probably only, let's say 5-6 times, over the course of a few days that I'm having those types of meetings. Right.
Okay.
And so it's not like I'm hearing it all the time is what I'm getting to. Man, if you're a professional counselor, like you are, well, one, just the amount of training you've got to go to become a licensed counselor or therapist is pretty in depth and pretty intense. Okay. But let's say you go through all that. The end game for you is still, be part of it, part of the racket, just getting the money. You're going to be sitting in front of people every day, hour after hour after hour after hour, hearing what they're sharing with you. And not everything is horrific and terrible and world ending. But there's enough of those that are mixed in with just the everyday problems of people to where I just think it would take an incredible toll on that person if they really weren't in it for the right reason. And I think they'd eventually go, nope, not worth it. I'll go make money doing something else.
Okay, well, to counter that,
okay,
this goes with my next question.
Okay.
Sort of.
Okay.
So there's like culture of people who want to go to therapy now.
Yes.
Like it's become cool in the culture to go to therapy. Like celebrities everywhere are like, I go to therapy every day, twice a day.
Yeah.
Sure. And my therapist walks around with me everywhere and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And that's become so cool. And everyone's like, hey, everyone should go to therapy. That's a phrase that exists.
Right.
Everyone should have a therapist. It's like, well, it sounds like just a big circle of people talking to each other, which is what life is. If everyone went to therapy. So given that, are these stories... Mm-hmm. Anyway, do you agree with that? And also, given that...
Okay.
Are these stories that these grifter therapists are listening to really all that bad?
Okay.
If everyone's going to therapy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I see what you're saying. Yeah, so number one, I do think that the idea of therapy has become very popular in the culture. So I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
I think in some ways it's healthy because it's moving away from the stigma of like people just going, oh, well, if you're going to a therapist, you're crazy, right?
Okay.
Or if you're going to a therapist, something really bad must be going on with you. So,
shouldn't that be the truth, though? Like,
yeah, I think that, and that's what I'm saying too. Like, I think we have to be honest about like what kind of counseling / therapy we're needing, right?
Right.
Because sometimes you're going to counseling / therapy for just a few sessions, and you're there. And you are able to walk through, process what you're going through, move on. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then other times it is really bad. Sometimes you're right. And you're dealing with the childhood trauma. You're dealing with anxiety. You're dealing with depression. You're dealing with suicidal thoughts, whatever it may be. All right. So and that is more intense, obviously. So I think you're getting a pretty large spectrum of people coming in, sharing things. And then I think there are those that are going to counseling to just talk and share. But I think one of the things that's become really popular is the idea of a life coach.
Yes.
Right?
I didn't even forgot.
Right. And
it's so much and so bad. Too many things to think of and write down for questions.
Right. And I think the life coach thing has become really popular. And sometimes and so there are life coaches, there are business coaches, individuals that coach you in business and or leadership coaches.
See, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But not being alive coaches. Hey, you gotta breathe.
Yeah, I think.
Don't forget. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
My life coach saved my life.
Right. Well, I do think there's a place, like you said, I think leadership coaching, business coaching all makes sense, right? You're trying to move and improve in your career field.
Yeah. And you don't know how things go when you move your life this direction. That
Right.
makes sense.
Right.
That
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
Yeah. And I think that's, and I think, and for me in the church, I think where a lot of the life coaching happens is in discipleship.
Okay.
And so I think discipleship actually helps with a lot of that. And do I think there are times that there are people that really need help sorting things out? Yeah. And that's probably why licensed counselors exist.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of a life coach, you don't have you get a certificate, and I'm not trying to demean those that are life coaches. All I'm saying is it's not the training and it's not like you're becoming a licensed counselor or a licensed therapist. And I think the life coaching part has become really popular. People are like, I'm a life coach with very little training.
Mm-hmm.
That does scare me. And I don't know why we're paying people to be life coaches to help us just, like you said, get through life. Now, again, because I think if you really have those kind of issues, go see a licensed counselor or, to help. That's would be my recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
And so so I go off on tangents on that, but yes, I do think that there's probably too many people seeking out therapy that really don't need it. And unfortunately, counselors are okay with it.
Yes.
Because they're making the money off of it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't disagree with that aspect of it. But all I'm saying is if that's all that they're rarely is that all that you're going to be hearing. See, now I think life coaches kind of are an exception to this, right? Because if you're really dealing with something like traumatic, or they're going to tell you, I don't do that, go see a counselor, go see a therapist.
Okay.
I think they can what I'm saying is I think that is the easier way to get away with a racket.
Okay.
Than being a licensed counselor or a licensed therapist.
So that's the easiest job.
I think
ever.
I think if you can get in, because with a life coach, a lot of times what people are looking for is literally like practical common sense things of helping them organize their life.
Like, should I drive to the store or walk?
Well,
I think you should walk today.
Usually it's a little more than just.
Thank you. Here's $500.
Well, usually it's a little more than that. And I do think, and again, I am very much for leadership coaches, business coaches. I think those are great. Those mentors are huge in people's lives.
Yeah, people who have done business already and now are coaching you how to do yours.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. If you're an up and coming entrepreneur,
right?
You want to connect and hook up and learn.
Because you want your business to work,
right? So you want to learn from people who've been entrepreneurs and been successful at it. So I agree with you.
Not people who have lived 2 years longer than you have.
Right. Well, and I will say this. That's actually a good point. There are people that come to me and they'll ask parenting questions. And I remember this would happen before I even had kids, or when our kids were toddlers, and they're wanting counsel on how to deal with their teenagers. And I would just say, I don't know.
See, that's what I don't get about this is a tangent.
Okay.
But that's what I don't get about Catholics not having kids or being married. It's like the priests or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
It means a lot that your pastor has been through this and knows what he's talking about when he has to do stuff with this.
100%.
And
100%. Because yes, you can give biblical counsel.
Yeah.
Right. But there's a difference between the biblical counsel and the practical counsel.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are just needing the practical counsel. What do I do with my teenagers in this specific situation? And there are times I can give maybe biblical guidance. And there are probably times, if I look back, that I probably gave more counsel than I should have because I really didn't know. And eventually I started pointing people to couples, not even counselors, just couples that I knew who had raised kids. Their teenagers were out of the house at this point, right? Their own kids are having kids, right? Hey, go talk to them because they did it seemingly pretty successfully. They helped their kids navigate through life as teenagers. Go talk to them and see what they would say.
Yeah.
The same thing like budgeting. I don't need a life coach to help me budget, right? Go find someone that handles their finances well, that can sit down with you and teach you how to do a budget.
Right.
You don't need to see a counselor. You don't need to see like, and I know that's like basic financial stuff, right? I mean, obviously if you're dealing with, stocks and the market and all that kind of stuff, that's a different beast, but just basic budgeting, for my monthly expenses and income. What do I do? Right? Go talk to someone who handles their finances.
Get a life coach.
Duh. Yeah. And again, I'm not trying to dog all life
and
coaches.
Go see a therapist.
I'm not trying to dog all life
and a psychiatrist
coaches.
And a counselor.
Right. But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that's an easier part, the life coach part, than like the licensed counselor, licensed therapist.
Okay. So you think it's harder to grift than I think it is?
Yeah, because again, if you're licensed, like just because of the people that the stories that you're going to hear, the people you're going to be counseling, like unless you're just a complete narcissist that doesn't have enough empathy for people, so you don't carry what they're saying, you just listen and then you're like, okay, here's my thoughts. Good luck. But I just think
sounds pretty easy to me.
I just think that would be really difficult, when you've got people that are really going through things and they're really seeking counsel. But maybe I'm underestimating how narcissistic our culture really has become.
The people who are getting therapy and don't really need it.
Okay.
What do you think is their thought process? What do you think's going on? Like how do they get to the point where they think they need therapy and then stay in it forever?
Well, I think probably two things, right?
Like how do I know if I need it, I guess?
Right. I think two things. I think one, you can start off legitimately needing therapy for a specific issue. Mm-hmm. And if you talk to people, a lot of times people find therapy, very cathartic because they're getting to talk. Someone is listening to them. Okay. And so for some people, you almost can get addicted to the therapy. And so even once you've processed through through the therapy, you've reached a point where you actually do not need it anymore. You might feel like you do. And that's when the therapist needs to be able to, from the get-go, the therapist needs to be very upfront with the client to say, I'm happy to do therapy with you, but there is the goal is to get you to where you do not need to see me, every week and then every month and then every few, wean you off, right? Like that's the goal of therapy.
Okay.
Or it should be. I know my thing may be like a little bit of an exception because I'm going once a month for the ability to kind of just, process and say whatever has come up in the last month in my life as a pastor that I can't share or talk with anybody else, but I can with a counselor.
Because you're not allowed to.
I'm not allowed to.
Okay.
And so, but I can with a counselor. And so therefore that's fine. Right. Mm-hmm. And I will be seeing a counselor indefinitely because of that once a month. Mm-hmm. That's all right. But I think for most people, if you're starting out, you're seeing a counselor, you're seeing a therapist, it's good. Okay. You've gotten to a good point, a good place. Let's start weaning you off. Let's start seeing each other less frequently. And then the goal is to completely, not have you there. It's and Melanie and I have done my wife and I have done marriage counseling, and we'll start off doing marriage counseling with people, but the goal is not for us to see that couple forever, right?
Right. Eventually they're going to get married, so it's not premarital counseling anymore.
Or if we are doing actual marital counseling with people, they come to us as a married couple, the goal is for us not to see them forever, right? It's to see them and help them, and then hopefully they find a healing. Or if it's just beyond us, we recommend them to somebody else. But we don't want to be seeing people forever. Okay. So I do think people can kind of get addicted to it almost. Or they don't have a therapist that just is.
What are they addicted to?
Having someone just listen to them.
That's it?
Yeah. It's amazing.
Okay.
People, there's just people that just genuinely, I guess they feel like they don't have someone that listens to them.
You can talk to Chat GPT.
Well, you can now. So maybe Chat GPT takes over. Yeah. I don't know.
Duh.
But I think for a lot of people, just being able to say it and have someone, enter into that space with them and hear them means something to people. And so, and I would say I get that to a degree. And again, as a Christian in a church, I'm going, and that's why we need discipleship.
Okay.
That's why we need a place where you can gather with other people and on a regular basis and say, hey, here's what I'm going through. Can you pray for me or pray for my family or pray for this situation? Right? Then you're kind of getting the same thing without it being a full 45-minute thing. You're not paying somebody. You're there with others. You've got a relationship with them. You can confide in them, and then they can pray with you. And so I do think people kind of get connected or hooked on being able just to share and talk. But then I do think there are individuals that just feel like they just constantly need it.
Okay.
And I think somebody needs to tell them, you actually don't. Like, I know you feel like you do, but you,
like a therapist.
Like a therapist needs to tell them, no, you don't. Like a therapist needs to be honest, right?
But they're not.
I
Because
mean,
you're paying them.
well, no.
And they have a slot open on Wednesdays that they need to fill.
And that can happen for some. I mean, right? I mean, obviously that happens for some. But I would hope that not all are sitting there going, yep, we're just going to keep meeting until you don't feel like you need me anymore.
Okay.
I think that would be sad.
Okay, so what do you think of group therapy? Is that good?
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah. Okay. Group therapy.
What's the point of therapy at all?
Yeah. I think we've covered that. But I think group therapy, I think it absolutely has its place.
Okay.
I mean, AA, NA, that's group counseling.
NA?
Narcotic.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I think, AA, NA, I think those are all, those are group counseling sessions.
Yeah.
And individuals that lead those are not always licensed counselors or licensed therapists. They're individuals
They're just alcoholics.
They're no. They're not. They're individual. A lot of times they are individuals who've overcome an addiction to alcoholism or to pills or to drugs. But they are trained. They usually go through a training to be able to facilitate an AA meeting. Mm-hmm. And so I do think that
this is vodka.
No.
You got to learn how to deal with everybody.
Right. No. So I think there's some really good. I think it's a good point in that, in being able to say, hey, this is who I am, and this is what I'm dealing with, and and to have an accountability, right?
Okay.
And so I do think there can be very good benefits to group counseling, to group therapy. The only downside is if you're dealing with something really. And by the way, there's more than just those kind of like AA stuff. Like there's grief support. So individuals that are grieving, you can go to a group for grief support. There's individuals that are dealing with, anger management, right? Like there's, how to deal with your anger. That there's groups that you can go to for that.
That's a scary room.
That can be a scary room. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you got a whole group of people that are struggling with their anger, right? But they can be really effective too, and the groups can be. One that that our church is kind of looking into and finding out more about is actually like for those that are caretakers of individuals that have dementia, and so just where.
What?
So.
Oh yeah, everyone in your church is old.
Well, not everyone in our church is old, Nate. And just because you're old doesn't mean you have dementia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But for individuals that do, it's a big deal, right? When they're starting, if you're you're a spouse most often, or you can be a child that's dealing with a parent, or you're dealing with a spouse that is developing Alzheimer's or is going through, there's several different types of dementia. You're going through that. You're really kind of, like you would go through the loss of a loved one twice. They will stop being the person you've always known them as, and then they will eventually have their own physical death. Mm-hmm. And so it's like two losses there. And so, but during the midst of that first loss, it's groups getting together and being able to not only share common stories, but have someone that's walked through that, be able to walk them through it too, is really powerful. So yes, there's definitely places for group therapy, definitely places for group counseling, and
all those things are free, by the way.
Yeah, they are.
So no problem here.
You're good with that.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the kind of therapy.
Except they're a little culty.
Yeah.
But
well, some people may think, depending on the AA group, they could be that way. But
yes.
The others, I don't think quite so much.
Okay.
But yes, you're right. Those generally are free.
But free cults. It's pretty good, actually.
No cult is
a lot
okay.
of cults are pretty expensive.
Right. So if you find a free one, take the deal. No, that's a terrible advice. Yeah.
And they give you coffee.
Yeah, they can call it. But I will say this: if you're in group therapy too, though, like you're less likely to share the most vulnerable parts of yourself to somebody and to a group. And so that's where you have a little bit of a limitation there. But no, I think a lot of people would say in groups, because of the way group dynamics work, groups can actually be really healthy.
Okay, so if you, Pastor Joseph, were in charge of therapy everywhere in America, what would it look like? How would you fix it?
Oh my gosh. What would it look like? How would I fix it?
How would you know how to kick out the bad therapists?
Man,
and only have good ones that only want you there for a few sessions unless something's really bad and you need to come longer, and they only give you drugs if you absolutely need them to get through the therapy, and then they get you off of them when you're done.
Man,
how do you get the therapy industry to be that way instead of the horrible way that it currently is?
That's like asking how we get big pharma fixed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same question. I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's just, anytime you have industries that are become this big, this large, it's really hard to control. And, unless you just want to start becoming very specific about who's, that only licensed counselors and licensed therapists can charge money, for example, and then there's a very, and then every licensed counselor, every licensed therapist has to see someone every so often to get reviewed, and they have to, you'd have to put in a lot of procedures there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe some people be like, let's do that. But I think it would be really difficult you're just never going to clean out every bad egg from any industry. And so I don't know how you go in and just fix this.
I know how you start.
All right. How do you start?
The app stores. This isn't good for us moving forward with this podcast, just by the way.
Okay.
I may cut this out later.
All right.
But I'm going to say it anyway.
Okay.
The app stores need to delete the BetterHelp app.
Okay.
From existence and nuke that whole thing.
Okay.
Because that is such crap. And the reason it's not good for us moving forward, because I think that they have put so much ad money out there and pay so many YouTubers and people on the internet to run ads for them that no one wants to say anything bad about them anymore. But I'm going to do it anyway, damn it. because that thing is such BS. Have you seen the ads for it?
No, I don't think so.
There's one, it's a girl, she's just brushing her teeth in her apartment by herself, and she just goes, I think I'm gay. I should see a therapist. I'm like, really? That's all it takes? I just need to have a weird question in my head, and I'm like, I need to see a therapist.
Right.
Forever. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
Right.
And we're in trouble. And we're never going to get any advertising ever.
Let's just close it down. Yeah.
It's a problem. They've made it such like a
and
everyone should just have this on the fly and do it from their phone and
right. And I will say this, it is problematic in the sense of because so often you're just going to kind of randomly choose a therapist.
Yes.
And you're doing it over video.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that for a lot of therapists during COVID, you had to do it that way. But sitting in a room looking at someone is so different than seeing you through a screen.
Yeah.
Because when I'm seeing you through a screen, my full brain is not actually engaging with who I'm seeing.
Yeah. If it was me, if I was the therapist on the other, I'd be watching TV and doing nothing.
Yeah, but it's a scientific fact that if I look at you face to face, that my frontal lobe is engaged more than if I'm seeing you via a screen.
Yes.
And so so I think that's why seeing someone face to face is still the best way to do it.
The other problem is they advertise like, find a therapist that agrees with you about everything.
Well, and that's there too.
And that's like, what?
Right.
Like, aren't they supposed to disagree with how you're living to tell you to do it differently so that things will be different and better? Anyway.
Okay.
I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're screwed. This whole thing's screwed. Well, and I'm going to have to cut that out because
we won't get anything.
We won't get anywhere with anything. Or maybe we'll be the pioneers into taking down BetterHelp.
Well,
we've
already you nuked BetterHelp, and I brought up Big Pharma. Yeah, we're definitely screwed.
Yeah, we're the best. Whatever.
Yeah.
Born to be canceled. That's what I say.
Every day. That's what I tell myself when I wake up. Born to be canceled.
Do you think that this huge therapy boom is happening in America for a reason? Like, do you think it has to do with the times we live in, or like the lack of, or church going away? Or that we're fat and lazy people now and we have it off too easy, and so we're just inventing problems to have something to do? Or do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably honestly a few different things going on.
Okay.
One, I think the boom, so in the healthy part of it, okay, is that that the stigmatism of going to therapy has dropped, that there is a willingness from people to admit I need help and go seek help when they actually really do need it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the good part of the increase in seeing a therapist. Okay.
Okay.
But then I think the negative parts of that is one, I think there is a very entitled, selfish, and at times narcissistic generation that really is all about themselves. And I say generation, I don't mean just like this one particular like millennials or Gen Xers or Gen Zs. I just kind of mean the individuals living at this time.
It's millennials. We started it.
Yeah. I mean,
we're the worst generation. I'll admit it.
Okay.
I know it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and I do think that's a problem with the millennials going down because they're so inward focused. Therapy can feed that because they want to constantly be validated in themselves. Or if something is wrong, it can't just be that they need to just make a change. They've got to go find out, well, I'm this way because I'm a victim because of ...
Okay.
And so there's so
constant looking inward
because
they've got nothing else to do.
Right.
They're bored.
And so they claim victimhood, right? There's a lack of just taking ownership. Now, again, I know tons of millennials that are not this way.
No, you don't.
But I will say this. I'm going to say this. Being in a more rural country church.
What? Rural? What'd you say?
I'm from South Georgia, man. That's how I talk. I will say this. I think being in a more rural country church, I got real Southern real quick, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh God. I was actually trying to do it better, and I think it got worse. But all I'm saying is there is a little bit different mentality of kind of that old school mentality of I'm not, take ownership, work hard,
rub some dirt in it.
Yeah, rub some dirt. Right. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
I
like those people.
Like discipline is needed. Grow up. Raise your kids to take responsibility. If they don't, that's on them. There's a little bit of different mentality there, and so that I actually really appreciate. And so I do think that that's not just all millennials everywhere, but I am concerned. You get into higher education, into universities, and just what they're teaching, it feeds it. It's teaching them that, oh, poor you, like you don't have to own anything. You're the oppressed one. It's not your fault. all that, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
Preach, Pastor Joseph.
I think that has caused part of this because and unfortunately, because counselors are being trained in that environment, they are affirming those things from the very clients coming to them.
So counselors are victims too.
Counselors see victimhood, and so therefore they affirm a victimhood.
Right.
And allow people to, and this is what we talked about earlier, you can be a victim to things without staying or without living as a victim from that point on.
Right.
Regardless of how bad the situation was. Yes, it can be horrific, bad. We're not doubting that you were a victim in the moment. But don't live as a victim going forward.
So do you think this is because people don't go to church as much anymore? Do you think that has anything to do with it?
Well, but even church has gotten out of whack.
Right.
Because in church, it was take responsibility for, really take responsibility for your personal sin,
right?
For immorality, take responsibility for it, own it, ask for forgiveness. These are all ownership things, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm owning it. I'm asking for forgiveness. I want to become more like Christ. Okay.
Okay, so you're putting,
but let me say this too. Let me finish the thought. But in some churches today, I don't think there's anything really going on in those churches that's any more than this sense of, like a therapeutic self-help, deism. Like we believe there's a God, but we want to talk about how to be a better you and a better person. And here's the things that are holding you back. And, it actually becomes like therapeutic talking points from the stage,
right?
Self-help talking points from the stage. And if that's what we're feeding people,
Joel Osteen. Yes.
And
hate that guy.
we've had conversations about this before, so we won't beat that dead horse. But
no.
Wait,
he died?
No,
oh.
no.
He looks like a horse. It's funny because it's true.
Yeah. Now I'm picturing his face. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So I think that all of that has played into the fact that yes, there is. So yeah, the church not being who the church needs to be has probably fed into it as well. Because again, in the church world, this is what I talk about worldview parts. Our identity is not, the identity politics of today, not the identity of oppressor or oppressed, not the identity of race, gender, sexual orientation. No, your identity is who you are in Christ. That's your identity.
Okay.
And so I do think the identity part matters as well. And we've lost that battle largely in our country. So.
Okay. All right. So if I get it kind of seems like you're putting it, there's like 3 different categories.
Okay.
Like my brain doesn't have enough chemicals. I should go see somebody. Something's wrong. It's making me feel this way, or it has too many or whatever.
Right.
And then there's something actually happened to me.
Correct.
And I should go see a therapist.
Correct.
And then there's I made up some bullshit and now I need to go see a therapist.
Yeah.
And that's the one that's not.
Yeah, I've been coddled, or I haven't been disciplined, or what I haven't. Someone actually didn't teach me the life skills, right?
Right.
And life happens, and I'm falling apart because of it.
Right. And that stuff, I feel like you can fix yourself without a therapist.
Well, that's the whole part of self-help, right?
Yes.
But then there's the whole self-help industry, which, anyways.
I don't even mean self-help.
Right,
I mean like you can watch how other people who are successful at whatever do it,
right?
And watch how
that's and to be honest,
do you agree with me on that?
I do.
Okay.
I do, because I do think that, and that's part of why I would say discipleship, can actually replace a lot of this, because I can go learn from older men and older women of how to do certain things and make certain decisions
and live
in
a
life.
certain way.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Right.
So that's where you that's where you would replace a lot of therapy with Jesus.
Yeah, I would replace it.
Like,
yeah,
replace
well,
life coaching with discipleship.
Discipleship, correct.
And replace...
And a good bit of counseling with discipleship. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Because, and again, not all counseling, not all therapy, right? Like, I agree with you. There's kind of those three buckets.
Okay.
And someone may say, well, that's not nuanced enough. And it's probably not. It's probably a crude way of framing it. But
well, I'm crude.
Yeah. So I'm okay with the way you use those three.
Okay.
Those three things. And because again, like even for me, like when I'm a young man, I'm married, we got young kids, we're financially strapped, and I kind of want to have a woe is me attitude about it. Right. So, but, and
right.
I'm talking about like 10 years ago, kind of want to have like a woe is me attitude about it. And then you sit down with someone and they're like, I was there too.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
and it sucks. And you should think it sucks forever. Right. And it's going to be horrible for you for a really long time. So
but guess what?
Yeah.
You can do this.
Yeah.
You can make it through. You'll be okay.
Okay.
You know, hopefully there will come a time where you're not just living paycheck to paycheck, you know?
Right.
Like, and these are the steps that, you know, and
pull
they can
yourself up by your bootstraps.
Right. And they can tell you, these are the steps we took to have financial peace.
Right.
And I think,
I don't think you need to spend $500 an hour to find someone to tell you that.
I agree.
Okay, good.
That's what I'm saying. Like that was a discipleship relationship I had with somebody.
Yes.
And they were able to tell me that.
So replace all of that crap with Jesus. And then we fix the industry.
And then, okay. Very good.
Really?
I think we're onto something, Nate.
Okay.
I think we're onto something.
Okay, so if my brain needs chemical and balance drugs, go get some drugs.
Yeah. And with therapy, right? We're not just saying just the drugs.
Right.
Right. Right.
With therapy.
And
hopefully someone that did an x-ray or whatever they do to look at your brain.
Right.
And then if I was hurt as a child or someone did something horrible to me and I'm having a hard time getting over it, I maybe could go see a therapist. That would be legit.
That would be legit. And not everyone that goes through a trauma like that feels like they need to. And that's okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, but all the rest of it is nonsense.
Yeah. Because, yes. I think
go to church.
Go to church.
That's what you say?
I do think that's a huge part of it.
And if I'm having if I feel just down about life, go to church.
Go to church.
Not a therapist.
Get a discipleship group. Grow in Jesus. Yes.
Okay.
And then I think over time you can discern, oh man, like I've been going to church, I've been getting discipled, I'm still dealing with anxiety at a super high level, right? Where I'm having panic attacks.
Go to a good church, not a bad one.
Don't go to a watered down, seeker friendly church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go to one where they'll disciple you.
Yes. Go to a disciple making church.
All right. Well, next week, more about all the drugs. Because I got some shit to say about that.
Oh, boy. I bet you do.
I think. Are those questions? No, they're not in here. Yeah. But I can't remember what questions I wrote down, but I know they were good.
Okay.
Because I wrote them.
They have to be, then.
This is why I don't need therapy, because I'm very confident. And it's not a problem at all.
Right. Zero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go to discipleship.
Right. Just most humble person you know.
Anyway, I think we fixed it.
I think we made some huge strides, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now people will just listen to us.
Yeah, and delete their BetterHelp apps. Because you're fine.
Yeah, and yeah. Well, or if you need a good counselor, find a good Christian counselor.
Good.
Yeah.
You always fill in the gaps when I say really big overgeneralizations. But I'm a comedian. I have to be that way. Otherwise,
right.
It's not funny.
Right. I understand.
Yeah. And if I'm not offending someone who legit has problems, then I'm not doing my job.
And I'm a pastor, and I'm here to care for you still.
Yes.
Yeah. And care for these people still.
Right.
Yes. That's what I'm doing.
But not therapeutically, just pastorally.
Just pastorally.
Yeah, because.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, go to Patreon, $5, like, subscribe, share, comment, follow, download. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at When I Heard This Podcast, and X and locals at When I Heard This. Ring the notification bell. Tell everyone that you know about the show, and go to our website where there's t-shirts. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Nate Robinsoff, and you can follow Joseph on Instagram at
Rev Joe T.
This has been the When I Heard This podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.